back to the farm. My name's Roz, also known as Passion Flower, and you'll find me here each week talking about my farming and creative life. Since the beginning of spring, we've had some really heavy rain, up to about 57 millimetres this month. And that's been in a couple of quite heavy downpours. And what that has done is made the land very wet. We're now at the point that the small dam that we excavated has now burst its banks and it is now flowing down into the smaller dam, which is then flowing down into the larger dam. And even that is now flowing down into our creek, which is almost at the height of the bridge. And when you walk in the paddocks, it is literally just water and squelching everywhere. And as soon as it rains, all the surface water comes up and you can see it, and the paddocks are just flowing down towards our creek. So that's great. It's getting everything really drenched, and it will help for growing as the weather is now warming up. The sun will heat the earth and the grasses will start to grow and the plants will start to grow. I think we have a few more quite heavy rainstorms ahead of us before it's done. It's a pity we didn't get to excavate out the large dam before it got quite so wet. So we're hoping that next season we will be able to get that work done so that we do have a greater water storage capacity. This week we added 6 new chickens to our flock. It was back in episode 12 that I interviewed my nephew Seb and we talked about his egg business. And since then he has done a little bit of expansion. As you would have seen from some previous episodes, we built the new chicken shed and we've expanded the yard for both the chickens and for Nassie, the Marima. But now he has been working on the business side of things. And something really cool that he started to do is to sell reusable plastic egg cartons instead of the cardboard ones, which are not recyclable. And this has become a really huge hit. So people buy their carton and they label it and they get their dozen eggs, and when they want another dozen, they bring it back and we refill it, and then they get their next dozen eggs. So because the demand for eggs has increased, we need to get more chickens to cover that demand. So we got 6 to begin with, and we'll probably get 6 or so more in the coming weeks. But it's easier to introduce a small amount each time because it does take them some time to get used to the rest of the flock and to find their pecking order, literally. So we put them in the shed by themselves when we first got them home, and we clipped their wings. What we do is we just clip one side, we don't clip both wings, and it doesn't hurt them at all. It is like cutting your fingernails. It's just taking the tips off so that they're not able to fly over things. They can still flap and get up onto their roosts and move quite quickly along the ground, but they just can't fly over a fence, and they can't fly any distance if we free range them, which sometimes we choose to do when we're around on the weekends. So the new chooks have been with us for about a week now, and they're getting used to the schedule of the automatic door that opens and closes, and to the different feeders that we have for the water and for the grain, and where they need to lay their eggs. For the first couple of days, we're finding eggs underneath the roosting boxes, but they are now beginning to lay where the rest of the chooks lay as well. And we can tell which ones are the new chickens' eggs because they are much smaller than our established chickens. So we'll give these girls a chance to settle in completely to the flock, and then the plan will be to get some more and introduce them so that we're able to keep up with this new demand for Seb's eggs. Last week I talked about starting back knitting on my Lamina wrap by Amber O'Brien, and I'm loving knitting on it now, but when I first picked it up I encountered a problem. And I'd like to share that problem with you because it was a silly mistake and I figured it out in the end, but it's something to keep in mind when you go back to a project that you haven't worked on for quite a while. So what I did is I picked it up and I looked at my piece of paper with the pattern notes on it, and I started to knit what I thought was correct. But it wasn't. And the lace didn't match up. All the way through the pattern there are lines so that the lace looks the same the whole way through. And I was doing what the pattern said and it wasn't matching. So initially I thought, well, maybe I can just kind of fudge the beginning and the end and I can make the lines match up and then it'll still look okay. Then I was concerned that I'd then have to continue to think about every single row for the rest of the knitting because I wasn't sure where I'd made the mistake and it would keep not lining up properly. Thought, no, that's not the way to go about it. So I ripped it back to one of the garter sections and I counted my stitches to make sure I had the right number. I thought if I start from a point where it should be right, maybe I'd missed some yarn overs or something in the lace and I could reset and go again. So I ripped back, the numbers were all good. So I got back to the point of doing the lace again and again it didn't work. I'm like, oh, I don't know what I've done at this point. So I put it down, took a breath, and I got onto Ravelry and checked to make sure that there weren't any pattern updates that I might have missed or some notes that someone else might have written about maybe once you get to a certain number of repeats you have to like change something and there was nothing. And then I downloaded the pattern on the screen to have a look at and I realized that what I'd done is from the piece of paper that I had it folded and I'd skipped from one section, I'd missed a whole lace section and I'd gone to the next one. And it was that simple. And the fudging that I was doing to try and make that work was actually what the correct lace panel pattern directions were. So, lesson, read your pattern again before you start when you pick up a project. Go back and see where you've been and where you need to go. And hopefully you can then continue on and your pattern doesn't give you any stress. Now what I've also discovered as I'm getting further through in the repeats is that I'm actually not going to have enough of the Nevermore, the dark colour, to do as many repeats as I thought I was going to get to do. When I first decided on the pattern and the yarns, I'd weighed out each of my mini skeins once I'd done one repeat and was able to determine that I was going to have enough of the coloured yarn to do the number of repeats that I wanted to do. But for some reason, I didn't weigh my big skein of yarn to see if I was able to do enough of the lace repeats in between the colour. So I've got this much left of the dark colour now, and I still have 9 repeats left of the lace pattern if I want to do what I had originally planned. Obviously that's not going to happen. So my plan for today is to knit one more of the lace repeats, weighing this before and then weighing it again after to see how much in weight of yarn it takes to do one lace repeat. Then I can calculate how many I'm able to do. Then I have a decision to make on how I'm going to proceed. I can either, 1, buy more of this yarn if I can get it. 2, I can see if I can find a substitute yarn and continue on with the repeats the way I wanted to with the additional colors. Or 3, rip back to where I had done the first lot of my color repeats and then continue, but reduce the color repeats so that I have enough of the lace yarn to go in between each of the colors. So at the moment I was doing, you can see here, 2 of each color, and I'd gone all the way through with each of the colors doing 2 through to the purple. So what I could do instead is just go 1 of each color with a breaker color in between, or just do 1 of each color through. I guess it's going to depend on how many of the lace panels I'm still able to do. So I'd love your feedback to see which way you think I should go, or which way I might be heading towards. I do really love the pattern and I'm enjoying the knitting of it now. I've got back into the rhythm and the flow of it. And I do want to finish it in a way that makes sense and is going to look pretty and looks intentional, and not like I've just thrown something together at the end because I ran out of yarn. So that's why I'm doing this planning now that I've realized, rather than hoping and praying that there's enough, because realistically there isn't going to be enough. Well, that's it for another week. Thanks for spending some time with me. If you're enjoying these videos, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and I look forward to seeing you next week on the farm. Bye.